All right, welcome to what is basically the front line of modern finance. Today, we're diving deep into the most contested territory in the entire digital asset space, stablecoins. And this is a really high stakes battle for control over the future of money itself.
And look, that's not just some fancy metaphor. We're talking about a war fought with totally new kinds of weapons, and it's literally reshaping our world as we speak.
So, what exactly are these new weapons of financial warfare? Well, right at the heart of all this is something called a stablecoin. You can think of it as a digital token that's supposed to act just like a digital dollar. It's built on crypto tech, but it's designed to hold a steady value, avoiding those wild price swings you see with something like Bitcoin.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to look at the battle for sovereignty, what we're calling the Great Reserve Game, the major clash between privacy and surveillance, the global payments battlefield, and finally, we'll wrap up by exploring three possible endgames for this whole war.
All right, first up, let's head into our first theater of war, sovereignty. This is where stablecoins go toe to toe with the power of the state itself.
But why? What's the big deal here? I mean, why would a simple digital dollar keep governments and policymakers up at night? Well, it really all boils down to this one simple but super important question. And here's why. You see, when you have a stablecoin that operates completely outside the normal banking system, it becomes a direct challenge to a government's power. It can undermine their monetary policy, it can be used to get around sanctions, it can fuel illegal activities. And all of this happens by completely bypassing the banks we're all used to.
And don't think for a second this is some small niche thing. The scale of this parallel system is absolutely staggering. We're not talking about a little experiment here. Tether alone, it has a market cap of over $100 billion. When you put the top three together, you're looking at a massive, independent financial network. Okay, so that naturally brings us to our next major battleground, trust. I mean, if a stablecoin is supposed to be worth exactly $1, what's actually guaranteeing that value? Well, welcome to what we're calling the Great Reserve Game. You know, the conflict here is actually pretty simple. On one side, you have the regulators. They demand that for every single digital dollar out there, there's one real, ultra-safe US dollar sitting in a vault somewhere, a perfect one-to-one match. But on the other side, you have some of these issuers who've been, well, let's just say they've been tempted to invest those reserves in riskier things to try and make a profit. They're basically acting like a bank, but without any of the normal safety nets. And this chart, it shows you the problem perfectly. Take Tether's reserve breakdown from back in 2021. They claimed they were 100% backed by dollars, right? But look at this. Almost half of their reserves were in something called commercial paper, which is basically just short-term corporate debt. It's not cash. And that lack of honesty, that kind of risk, it set off all sorts of alarm bells for regulators and for the people actually using it. And yeah, there were real consequences for this. Tether got slapped with a $41 million fine for misrepresenting what was actually backing their coin. This was a huge shot across the bow from regulators, basically screaming that this transparency thing, it's not optional. But listen, this kind of risk isn't just for the so-called controversial players. Even USDC, which everyone saw as the safe, regulated option, had its own crisis. It briefly lost its one-to-one peg with the dollar, falling all the way down to 87 cents. And why? Because its issuer, Circle, admitted it had over $3 billion stuck in the failed Silicon Valley Bank. It just goes to show how fragile the trust in these systems can really be. So this whole battle for trust, it doesn't just stop with the money in the vault. It extends into data and surveillance. And this brings us to what's essentially an intelligence war. It's a massive clash between users who, want some financial privacy, and governments that are demanding total visibility. Welcome to the battle of privacy versus the panopticon. At the heart of it, you have this fundamental disagreement. The government's goal? Total visibility. They want to be able to link every single crypto address to a real-world identity. But the user's goal, it's pretty different. They want financial privacy, the ability to make transactions without feeling like someone is constantly looking over their shoulder, just like you can with cash. And make no mistake, this is not just some theoretical debate. Regulators are actively targeting the tools people use to maintain their privacy. Services like Tornado Cash, they've been straight up sanctioned by the US Treasury. Privacy coins like Monero, they're getting booted off major exchanges. It's this constant, high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Okay, let's zoom out a bit now to the global stage. Because our next theater of war is all about global payments. This is where stablecoins are taking direct aim at the system that's been king for 50 years, the SWIFT network. For half a century, if you wanted to send money from one country to another, you had one option, SWIFT. And if you've ever done it, you know the downsides. It's painfully slow, it can take days, and it's super expensive, thanks to all those fees from intermediary banks. Okay, now compare that old system to this. $500 million, sent in 12 seconds, for a fraction of a penny. That is the kind of disruptive power that has the entire traditional banking world sitting up and paying very, very close attention. But of course, that incredible efficiency has a flip side, a darker side, especially from a geopolitical standpoint. The US Treasury has called stablecoins a critical evasion channel because they can allow sanctioned nations like Russia and Iran to move money around completely outside the control of the SWIFT system. They can basically bypass economic sanctions. So, okay, we've got these battles raging on all these different fronts. Sovereignty, reserves, privacy, global payments. So how does this whole war end? Let's talk about 3 possible endgames. Okay, endgame number 1, coexistence. This is a future where you have a tiered system. The big guys like USDC, they get regulated just like banks. Meanwhile, the smaller, more decentralized projects get to operate with fewer rules. Endgame 2, conquest. Think of this as the China model. Private stablecoins are just banned, completely outlawed. In their place, you get a state-controlled central bank digital currency. And finally, endgame 3, collapse. This is the scary one. A massive stablecoin, maybe Tether, fails. It triggers a huge market crash, total chaos, and a panicked regulatory crackdown that just crushes innovation for years to come. Look, the final outcome here it's anyone's guess. It's far from certain. But one thing is absolutely clear. This war is not over. In fact, it's really just getting started. We are standing at the dawn of a completely new financial era, and the battle lines are being drawn right now. So the question isn't just about which side is going to win. It's about what kind of financial world we're going to be left with when the dust settles.